Can I request you to please introduce yourself and Espada?
Sure. My name is Tom Hyland. I'm the co-founder and a partner at Espada, which is a Bangalore-based impact investment firm. We actually manage two funds. Espada is our second fund. The first fund we manage is called the Song Fund, S-O-N-G, and actually Song is an acronym for the investors. S is for Soros, as in George Soros' Economic Development Fund. The O-N is Omidyar Network, and the G is Google, which was a fund that was set up in 2008 as a pioneering impact fund. Espada is a patient capital vehicle, meaning we invest like a fund, but we actually don't have a timeline for exiting our investments, meaning we can stay invested in our companies for a longer period.
If I could ask you a little more about the investment thesis that you follow, what sectors do you look at, and also what are the key ingredients that you look for in a social entrepreneur when you decide to invest in them?
So we're very active across several sectors in India. Song was actually set up expressly as a non-microfinance fund because when it was set up, there were a number of impact funds focused on microfinance. Our view was to actually look at other kinds of livelihood and productivity enhancement sectors and show that we could actually invest in and importantly grow and scale companies in agricultural supply chains, healthcare and education, where we continue to invest actively. We're also very active in financial services, specifically around small business lending, and increasingly looking at opportunities in renewable, clean tech, wind and solar. Entrepreneur is just critical, and we find that our entrepreneurs actually tend to skew slightly older than many entrepreneurs who are engaged in technology. That is because, if you look at the sectors where we invest, whether it's cold chain, education, healthcare, agriculture, these are very difficult execution businesses, right? It requires a lot of sector knowledge. And we find that it's a very unique combination between entrepreneurial endeavor and grit and years of expertise. And so we've actually looked to back teams that we think have the wherewithal to build businesses in these sectors, but that also come with significant industry experience.
And if I could ask you another question, generally there are two approaches towards investing. Either people look at a sector agnostic view, or people pick a sector and try to go really deep. They have a sector thesis very deep. Where would a Song fit within these two areas, or is it a blend of both?
It's a blend of both insofar as we look across different sectors, but I think unifying all of the sectors we invest in, there's a single theme, which is access. And that for us is access to capital, in which we have built a thesis out, and again, capital for small merchants. Access to what we call essential services, which for us would be high quality, low cost education and healthcare. And then access to markets. And then access to markets, really we've built out what is actually a very large portfolio of companies, actually the majority of what we've done in small farmer productivity enhancement and supply chain logistics. Specifically, we have companies that link small growers, small producers, to end consumers. And they're bypassing many of the intermediated steps along the agricultural supply chain.
And given that your portfolio is so heavily focused on India, what is one key challenge that you think your entrepreneurs face across sectors when they have to execute their businesses on ground?
So, there's many. I don't know that we have enough time to actually delve into all of them. Clearly, access to capital is a constraint. If you look at whether it's our fund or many of the impact funds or many of the commercial funds in India, many of them are funded with foreign capital. And when you have foreign direct investment, you're actually quite limited, although this is changing and getting easier, but you're quite limited in the kinds of products that you can offer your entrepreneurs, and debt is highly constrained. I think working capital, I think easier bank lines for entrepreneurs continue to be a challenge because equity is a very selective tool and actually not suited to many of the kinds of businesses that we look to support.
Great. And I think my last question would be, what would be your one or two top things that you think can really take the impact investment industry to the next stage, get it to the stage where it becomes more commercially viable?
So I think I've watched this sector evolve in India, and I'm actually it's come a tremendous way, and I think it's continuing to go a tremendous way. Actually, I think the impact investing funds, which if you look at them, have actually developed significant sector expertise in several sectors. Obviously, one is access to finance, two, supply chains, healthcare, education. They actually represent very large white spaces, and I think some of the most investable opportunities for funds going forward, whether they're impact or more commercially motivated. And so I think actually what you will see is impact funds extremely well positioned to actually grow and scale their businesses and actually make commercial capital markets work for them. So I don't think it is a us versus them. I think there's an effect here of actually how do we grow just the entrepreneurial sector in India much larger together.
Got it. No, thanks, Tom. That's
Okay.
very helpful.
Thank you.
The impact investment sector, and how did you start the fund in India?
So I actually remember the moment well. About 15 years ago when I was 25, I was sitting at my desk at my first job at Goldman Sachs in San Francisco, and I stumbled upon microfinance. And I had a realization that I could actually do more, and with the finance background that I had, and I really wanted to work more broadly internationally. I quit my job, I bought a one-way plane ticket to China, and I actually spent the next 2 years traveling by myself throughout Asia. I had an internship with the US State Department in Laos, amongst many other things, and I actually spent almost a year riding trains around India, actually meeting everyone I could meet in the microfinance sector in India. And I saw a tremendous opportunity, both personally and professionally, to engage deeper and really build out what I thought were critical parts of the supply chain and the financing chain that needed to be built. And that would actually lead to my going to business school in India. I'm a graduate of the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, where actually the first fund, the Song Fund, was set up. And I've been here ever since. And so I continue to be enthused about the opportunity here. This is home.
Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
think that's been the most interesting answer that I've had from all the conversation. No, thanks for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Introduction, your name and background, real short, and then I'll follow up with the motivation question. What motivates you to start?
Right. So I am Sandeep Patel, and I am founder of NIPRA. It's a waste management company which is making everybody zero waste to landfill.
Yeah. And what motivated you to start this company?
So the journey has been long one. There are a lot of reasons during the whole journey, which kept on changing as we progressed. But we saw larger challenges about the dustbin waste or the waste which was going to the landfill as a key challenge where nobody was really looking at it. And the idea was to really mitigate the risk, not only environmentally but also socially, which is involved with the rack pickers and everybody else, and how we could actually escalate improvise the lifestyles of the waste picker by bringing them into the mainstream. At the same time, reducing the waste going to the landfill and ensuring the resource recovery was there. So it's a double kind of strategy which we are focusing on. And we build a model over a period of time with a lot of mistakes and falling and getting up again and on a daily basis. And today, at least, we can say we are a zero waste to landfill company, which is inclusive model, which helps people become entrepreneurs, social security driven employment, at the same time having positive impact on the environment.
Maybe you could speak to a key challenge that you're facing now or previously.
Previously, it was more about getting people on board to really fund it and support the model. And I think we were lucky enough to have Avishkar come quite early and help us survive through various challenges. I would put it very clearly, survive. But it's an infrastructure business. So end of the day, you need to have a certain infrastructure to really service the intention. And I think we survived that. We have created an infrastructure where innovation has happened because of the failures we have gone through. And I think there is no one single challenge which was there. It is multiple challenges. It's people-driven, technology, scale, and everything. So important was to keep on surviving and building on it. So only thing which could help was constant innovation where capital was supporting it. Because in impact space or in the waste space which we are, it is important to survive and keep on improvising. And that gap or gestation of survival is more important. And I think we were lucky to survive through that phase.
Maybe you could speak, thinking of advice for other social entrepreneurs relating to your experience raising investment from Avishkar, and what tips you might give.
See, only advice is start every day as a new day. Past failures should teach you to improvise, not to fall. And I think especially in the space where it's more people driven, where it's impacting lives or the environment, challenges will be there, right? but how you can really make it much more standardized using technology or processes would really help, sustain and survive and scale. So that's what my advice would be.
Just a basic introduction, your name, and then the second question on.
So if you let me know, I'll start.
Sure. Yes, please start.
Hi, my name is Vineet Rai, and I'm the founder of Avishkar and Telecap Group. We not only invest in creating businesses that make impact, but we also try to build an ecosystem. We invest in India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, East and West Africa.
Great. And your motivation to enter the impact investing sector?
Well, I'm actually a classical middle class guy. I'm a forester by training. I didn't want to actually make any impact at all. I was trying to solve a problem. If you look around yourself, the society has many different kinds of problems, and I was motivated to take capital and talent to rural India, which I believe was struggling, to have solutions that are sustainable for their own problems. And it was in this quest over a period of time, and I predate impact investing as a term by 8 years. I started in 2001, was there in the group as part of the group in 2008 that named the term impact investing as what we do. But the fact is, impact investing existed for much beyond the name has existed, and will probably continue to exist beyond the name itself.
Maybe next, speak a little bit to Avishkar's current strategy and focus.
So as far as we are concerned, for us, impact investing is the idea of identifying large-scale social problems and then taking extraordinary risks with capital to create unpredictable returns. And just to elaborate on that, there are large complex problems. There is a problem of waste, there is a problem of education, healthcare, where how do you take these services that some of us from middle or upper middle or rich communities take it for granted? How do you take this to those people who do not have access to them? To make that happen, you will have to actually come up with new business models, and those business models require capital to take extraordinary risks. And that's why commercial venture capital, commercial private equity is not willing to do it. So in my view, until unless you are doing something which is quite different from what venture capital and commercial private equity is already doing, you do not qualify as impact investing. What is the consequence out of it? A lot of people ask me this question: would you compromise return for impact? I think the only thing that we compromise for return on impact is that we are willing to live with an unpredictable returns. If the company that we build in, because it is dealing with a very mass market, if it's become successful, the returns are going to be extraordinary. But if it is not successful, then you are going to get a zero return. Irrespective whether you are a venture capital or private equity guy, given the markets and the risks that it takes, the returns always remain unpredictable. I think the only probable difference is that we are taking extraordinary risks and yet continuing with unpredictable returns. Returns can be high and low. Unpredictability is really the risks that we are talking about.
Two questions. The first one to the audience of young people. What are the skills that you would look for in younger people to join the impact investing sector?
Well, I think impact investing sector at this point of time is a very open sector. So if you are a young person passionate about the idea of actually making a difference to the lives of the people, you are a great volunteer. But if you want to really make a difference, you need to first probably either work with an entrepreneur or work with a business so that you at least understand what a business do. The second ladder to the idea is to figure out how do you actually make a difference. So do you have money to offer? Do you have networks to offer? Do you have skills to offer? And is there a combination that you have together with you, or you are looking for an institution which has that would allow you to make that offer to an enterprise in case you want to make a difference to an enterprise. And I think that's really the combination that one is looking for.
Great. Maybe one last question. For the impact investing sector to scale, what are some of the key drivers that you see that need to happen?
See, some of the challenges behind impact investing sector, and I think one of the first challenges that I learned over a period of time, that the name impact investing, till the time it didn't exist, it was very difficult for pools of capital to even understand who we are. The fact that we have been able to actually get the name impact investing as one of the line items in the large pools of capital itself is one of the biggest progress that we have made. I think the second and the biggest challenge that we are probably facing is how do you make sure that this large pool of capital goes to those guys who have the ability to decentralize and take this capital down. It's easy to actually raise $2 billion and invest $200 million in very large companies. Remember, if you're operating in India or Africa or Southeast Asia, you are actually making a lot of impact. So Unilever makes impact, but investing in Unilever, would it qualify as impact investing, is a big challenge. The big challenge today for India or impact investing across the globe is how do you continue to hold the essence of our raison d'etre while you're trying to scale yourself. That's really the conflict.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I request you to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi Ria. I'm Vikram Gandhi. I'm a founder of Asha Impact. I'm also a professor at the Harvard Business School and also a founder and a board member of Social Finance India.
Thank you. What motivated you to enter the impact investment industry? What got it really started?
Yeah, so I've been in the financial services industry ever since I graduated from business school. Essentially worked on Wall Street in New York and other places for over nearly 25 years. And once I had decided to move on from that career to basically do good, I guess, I figured, where can I actually use the skills and the experience that I've built up over the years? And impact investing seemed to be kind of an area which, this is around 2009, 2010, had started getting some traction, but at the same time was not really well known. And I had been involved with the Grameen Foundation, with Dr. Yunus, and a whole bunch of other initiatives within the framework of Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse where I worked. And so I felt that how can I take those skills, employ them into an investment kind of framework, and at the same time having an impact beyond, say, pure philanthropy and charity. And so that's really how I got more interested, because what Impact Investor did for me was it kept me rigorous and focused on business aspects, understanding business models of companies you invest in, understanding the financials, understanding valuation, but then really bringing an overlay as to how all that can actually make a difference. And how do you both not just measure impact initially, but how do you manage it over a period of time, just like you manage a financial investment. So that's how I got involved. It was early days, and we set up Asha Impact largely because I felt impact investing in India was still, and probably still is, kind of a domain of foreign capital. And my focus of setting up Asha Impact was to say, how do we bring domestic Indian capital to really address what are important social and developmental issues in the country.
If I would request you to, what would be a 101 on impact investment? Someone new to the sector, how do they understand the scale?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So I think if you look at the spectrum, I think about it as two ends of the spectrum. One is investing. So when you make an investment, you basically are looking at a return. And in fact, the course that we teach at Harvard Business School, where we call it, which has just been launched, and I can talk about that a little bit, is called Investing in the 21st Century, Risk, Return, and Impact. So if you go back into the investing world, initially, or nearly 100 years ago, people would just invest and say, okay, I got a return. Then they realize, well, that's kind of interesting, but you need to have some sort of risk metrics, because earning 10% on something is not the same as earning 10% on something else, and therefore you need to understand relative risk. I think the phase we're in right now is that in addition to risk and return, we have to think about impact and so that's one end of the spectrum, which is pure investing for financial return, risk-based return analysis, and putting an impact overlay on that by saying, like, you don't have to sacrifice financial return, but can you actually, earn money and do good at the same time? It's kind of the no-cost way of doing good. So that's one end. The other end is pure charity, which is a hugely positive activity and has a very, very important role to play in this world. But essentially, in that role, you're giving money away, you're writing a check, and essentially you're not expecting any capital back. What you're expecting is a social return of whatever the charity is. So you've got this end which says, I'm investing, I'm going to get my capital back and a market-based return adjusting for risk. And at the other end is charity. And so the world of impact investing I really think of in two buckets. One is, can you use investing and business principles to have more effective charity, which is, let's not just focus on outputs, let's focus on outcomes and develop metrics and kind of monitor them and manage them just like you would a business. So that's one side. And the other side is earn market-based returns and do good at the same time. In the middle too, there's another huge spectrum, which is essentially says, I can actually sacrifice some market-based return. That means I don't earn my cost of capital, but at the same time have impact. So these are like kind of the three buckets: market-based returns with impact, more effective charity, and then there's a whole spectrum in the middle which says there are trade-offs between the two, and how do you measure them, and how do you manage them, and how do you think about them as you make investments.
Great, I think that's really, really helpful for everyone who's going to take the course. And probably one more question from my end would be, what is the key challenge to scale the sector right now? You have Sir Ronald Cohen talking about the tipping point. What would be the 2-3 tangible actions that need to be taken to reach that tipping point and get more commercial interest in the sector?
Yeah. So right now, if you think about it, we kind of bucket everything into one. But essentially, the way I kind of think about it is that you separate out the public markets from the private markets. So traditionally, impact investing, when it was developed at least the term was developed in 2007, 2008, it was very much around the private markets. But the public markets are a much, much bigger pool of capital. And so therefore, the question really is, how do you bring in the public markets into this whole area? Currently, approximately 25% of all managed assets, that's roughly $25 trillion globally, have some sort of impact overlay. Majority of that are public markets, but it's in the context of negative screens. So for example, I'm not going to invest in tobacco stocks, or I'm not going to invest in alcohol stocks, or I'm not going, I'm the Church of England and I refuse to invest in anything that goes against the principles of Catholicism, etc. So that's a big bucket, but 25% is still not enough. And so I think the key issue really is, in terms of getting more capital in, two things need to happen. One is we have to develop more academic evidence that you actually can do good without sacrificing return, because a lot of capital out there is fiduciary capital, which means it's got to earn a market-based return. So like pension plans, insurance companies, these are the big university endowments. These are the big pools of capital which have fiduciary obligations, and unless they can point to proper academic evidence which suggests that you don't sacrifice returns for doing good, there'll be hesitancy to invest there. Including the same as in the private markets. Cambridge Associates and a bunch of others have done some studies, but there's just not enough data. It hasn't happened for long enough to have any conclusive evidence in that. So that's one, is just developing more of a track record, more academic evidence one way or the other. I think the second is education. If you take family offices, which is a huge pool of capital, and this is always quoted, you interview millennials, etc. They actually, 57, there's some research which says baby boomers like me, etc. Maybe 20% think that capital should do good, etc. But millennials, nearly 60% plus think that. And there's going to be a huge generational shift of money. I think it's approximately $40 trillion going from the baby boomer generation to the millennial generation. The question is really providing an education and awareness. Right now, about only 15% of all family offices globally kind of think about impact investing. That number needs to increase dramatically. So currently, most think, well, I'm going to invest, just focus on the risk return piece, not the impact piece. And then whatever money I make, I'll decide what charity I do with it. Bringing those two together, that those are not mutually exclusive, I think, is a big challenge. And it's a challenge in India. I talked to a lot of, even while we were building our Asha Impact, people don't get this, that you can actually be investing, earning a return, and having impact at the same time. So I think there's a big push that needs to happen in that direction.
Last question on skills.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, it's important to recognize, and this is something we emphasize in the course that I teach as well, is that this is a finance course. And this is, there actually is the word investing in this phrase, impact investing. So I think the skill set that's truly required is that you've got to be a good investor. You've got to be able to analyze things that you're going to invest in. You've got to think about their business model, like I said. You've got to build out projections. So that'll be the one skill that is critical. But the second skill is the empathy piece, which is that I think both need to come together here. What tends to happen till now, and I hope that changes, is that as soon as you talk about impact investing, it becomes, there's some soft kind of mushy thing which we'll feel good if we do it. I don't think that's right. I think you need to feel good when you're doing it, but it is investing. And if you think about the framework that I just mentioned, whether it be market-based, concessionary capital, or charity, you got to be thinking about all those three in a rigorous analytical manner. So I think the skills are, investing finance skills, understanding business skills, And then I think also important, very important, is the empathy piece, which is that, you know what, money here is not just to make a return, but it's to do good.
I think that's great, Vikram.
All right.
It'll be very helpful. Can I request you to introduce yourself in Northern Arc, please?
I'm Ravi. I head the fundraising and the product side of Northern Arc Investments. Northern Arc Investments is a specialized asset manager who focuses on building innovative finance structures for funding social enterprises. And over the last 10 years, we have cumulatively done debt facilitation of about $5 billion in this space, in the impact space, and we focus solely on debt. Debt is where we feel a large need is there, and that's where our board mandate business works in.
Got it. If I could request you to introduce some of the products that you as Northern Arc support, and also give an overview of what's the key difference in debt markets for regular enterprises versus social enterprises.
Sure. So when we initially started in this space, we felt that there was a strong need for debt. We did feel that there were structures in place in the market which are providing equity, and we felt that social enterprises were not optimally using a combination of debt and equity, and they were using a lot of equity where debt could have been substituted. Now for doing this, it was challenging because the information asymmetry among social enterprises is very high, and this is not because of lack of transparency in reporting. It's simply because of the fact that most social enterprises operate in a space which is new. It's doing a business model which is not conventionally done. So by definition, it are mostly startups, or even if they are not startups, they are enterprises which are in the stage of scaling up and have not scaled up fully, as well as the understanding behind the business model is very low. So we understood very early on that the only way you could do debt in this space is by making use of structured finance. Structured finance offers you tremendous opportunity to cut down on information asymmetry. It allows you to go much beyond plain vanilla debt products and structure very, very tailor-made financing solutions. And fortunately, even if not in India, globally, there have been several structured finance platforms and transactions which we could draw on, customize it for India, and provide funding. Now to come to specifics, the first product which Northern Arc Group specialized in very early on when it started in 2007 was securitization. Securitization helps in isolating risk, in creating bankruptcy remote structures, as well as providing credit enhancement to take up the risk profile of the asset to something which is suitable for an external investor. So for example, normally where you would have a case where an investor is not directly funding a social enterprise, you can create a structure, right, where the investor invests in a senior tranche which is more safe, and there is a junior investor who takes on much more risk, right. So if using these kind of structures, you can have mainstream capital market participate in debt of social enterprises. Now securitization worked out quite well.
If I could request you to just elaborate for someone who doesn't have any sense about securitization,
Yeah.
How would you explain that to them?
Sure. So now in a normal debt, you are exposed to the risk of the entire company, right? So your risk on the company is the same as any other funder. Now what if you were a more risk conservative investor and you would like to take exposure to that social enterprise but with some protection? Now the way this protection would normally work is that two counterparties or three counterparties come together and together invest in a social enterprise. However, the seniority differs. So what it means is that the first priority on cash flows is for the senior investor, and only when he has been paid in full does the cash flow from the social enterprise go to the second investor and the third investor. Second investor and third investor are generally referred to as a mezzanine investor and the equity investor. So what it does is that even though the enterprise, the social enterprise remains the same, the cash flows coming from that is split differently based on the risk profiles of different investors. Now the senior investor has the comfort that he is exposed to the social enterprise. However, he has the cushion of the junior and the mezzanine investor in that transaction. So that helps the rating of his investment to go up. So which enables capital market participants, mainstream capital market participants who could have a certain rating threshold to participate in this segment. Now, what is in it for the people who are providing the junior or the equity tranche? Now, these are specialized players who actually understand the risk behind a social enterprise, right? So they are able to take that call. So they take a higher risk, but they also earn a higher return. So it works out for all counterparties. So it's essentially a way of taking a blended yield and slicing it across different tranches and placing it to different set of investors based on their risk return framework.
And if I could ask you, like, what are one or two of the key factors that define debt for social enterprises? What are some of the challenges that they face? One thing you mentioned was that there's a lot of equity. There's not enough equity, and people are using equity also for the wrong reasons. So what is your advice to someone who's completely new to the sector about A, how should they approach debt? When should they use it, and when should they not use it?
Okay, so just stepping on back to where you mentioned about the equity part, a lot of equity coming into social enterprises and there not being adequate debt is something which is not limited to only social enterprises, at least in the Indian context. In India, you have the debt capital markets is relatively underdeveloped when you compare it with developed countries or even the emerging markets. So for example, if you take China, Brazil, and other emerging market countries, you will see that the debt capital market in India is very, very underpenetrated. So by underpenetration, what I mean is that unless you have a certain rating threshold, and that generally means a AAA or a AA rating, you will not be able to access capital markets. The depth in the market is not there for lower rated securities. And the entire market is lopsided towards government bonds. The corporate bond market is very, very small. Whereas if you look at the equity markets, you have even small to mid-sized companies doing an IPO and getting access to equity. So it's not unique to social enterprises where they are able to attract equity and not debt. Also, we should keep in mind that at a very, very initial stage, you can only fund through equity. That's debt really cannot replace equity. So my point really was that at some point, debt can complement equity, and I personally feel that that point is earlier, whereas today enterprises have to really grow before they can attract debt. Now again, in terms of what social enterprises can do, fortunately there is a big movement towards debt. Venture debt, for example, is big internationally, is catching up in India. We have a few AIFs, who have an explicit venture debt strategy. In fact, not a few, and in fact, there are 5 to 6 AIFs today who are doing venture debt. They are providing, debt to a social enterprise and asking them to replace and not do an equity round, replace it with debt and then do an equity round later on. So that prevents dilution of the promoters. That debt could be more suitable, as it's generally debt is lower cost, so it helps in bringing down the weighted average cost of capital, and there could be several other benefits, of the promoter's skin in the game, remaining intact by using debt.
What would be some of the key characteristics of this venture debt that you're talking about? And this is very specific to the impact investing industry as well.
So venture debt is actually a great product. However, one of the characteristics of investing companies attracting such debt is their capital raising ability. One of the key underwriting factors where that a venture debt provider will look before he funds a social enterprise is what is the ability of that social enterprise to raise equity. The reason is at an early stage, social enterprises may not be profitable. They could be burning cash flows as well. So debt, when looked at in this context, is not really suitable because debt is a product which has to be serviced with coupons, right? So most venture debt strategies rely on a subsequent round of equity paying back the debt holder. So equity raise becomes really key. Now there is a certain class of social enterprises who are able to raise equity quite well. They may be the large startups or maybe operating in a segment which is very high on the radar of PE investors and VC funds. So for them, venture debt works. But for a large part of the social enterprises, venture debt may not make sense if the potential for raising equity is not as high as for other sectors. In this particular cases, what the impact investment community needs to do is to identify and specialize underwriting standards to work with those social enterprises. I'll give you a small example. Before microfinance, there was a conventional wisdom that a person who is in the bottom of the pyramid is not creditworthy. microfinance turned that story upside down. Right? Microfinance proved that just because somebody is poor doesn't mean he's not creditworthy. And I think the same analogy actually works in the case of social enterprises as well. Earlier, there used to be a belief that only large companies, profitable companies, companies with a lot of visibility and branding can access the debt capital markets. And only they, when they access debt capital markets, can actually pay back on that debt. And today, what we are seeing is, at least in our work, and we have done about $5 billion worth of funding into social enterprises. We have had a zero default track record. So we have proved that you can, through a focused approach, develop strong underwriting guidelines and give funding to social enterprises, and it's not necessarily credit unworthy. It is credit worthy. In fact, I would go on to say that they are more credit worthy than some of the larger companies.
Great. And I think another one or two questions that I had were, what are the key guiding principles that a social entrepreneur should keep in mind to use this kind of venture debt? And yeah, let's start with that first.
Okay, so I think it's important to understand that debt has very different characteristics compared to equity. The central thing which a promoter needs to understand is debt is a product with zero upside, full downside, because the return is capped and your capital can go, bust. Whereas equity is a product which has unlimited upside and of course full downside as well. So, and a promoter who's trying to raise, venture debt, has to have a lot of cash flow planning done. This is different from saying that he has to have a lot of business planning to be done. Cash flow planning, is a part of business planning, but if you're raising venture debt or any other kind of debt, cash flow planning becomes very, very important. Using debt in a wrong manner can actually, also put you in a very difficult situation. For example, today, bankruptcy laws in India are such, post the recent changes in the amendment, that a single creditor can file a petition for winding up of a company at the instance of a single rupee or a single day of overdue in terms of debt repayment. So there is a lot of responsibility which comes with it. So the promoter has to judiciously decide whether it's equity, which makes more sense right now, or debt. In case where he feels it's debt which makes sense, he has to see who is willing to provide him a debt which matches his internal cash flow profile. So for example, if it's a debt which requires monthly servicing of coupon and principal, it may not be the most relevant for him. Maybe his revenue will kick in post 2 to 3 years and he requires some kind of moratorium on servicing on the debt obligation. So the debt has to be structured in a way which is suitable for the social enterprise. I think if all of these things are taken care of, that is something which will really complement their equity and contribute to the social enterprise's growth.
And I think one or more key question that we had in mind was for a lot of the students who are going to be understanding and listening to this from a very global perspective. I think, just understanding, you mentioned briefly about this, like India versus the other global markets for debt. I mean, are there any other global markets or global, countries across the globe that you see are more proactive in helping social enterprises with debt? Is there any example that you've seen so far?
So my knowledge in terms of the global scenario is limited, but at least one country which has made tremendous strides in terms of alternative sources of debt funding is China. There are downside risks to it also, but however, China is one country which has made a lot of stride to an extent where there's a large peer-to-peer lending industry there, which is totally bypassing banks and wholesale finance institutions and actually connecting borrowers and lenders directly. Right, so that's a really alternative form of debt which has picked up in that country. However, there are downside risks to it as well. There are cases where the peer-to-peer lending system has actually led to a lot of investors losing out money because underwriting standards were not proper. India is still nascent. For example, we just last year had RBI introduced the peer-to-peer lending guidelines. So it's relatively carved out. Our debt market regulator is also very, very cautious. Anything which can involve a retail population or a population which doesn't fully understand the risk, getting them into debt bandwagon has been very, very challenging. And I think the single biggest important deterrent to the development of high yield bond market. So for example, US has a high yield bond market. So it actually has an excellent debt market, which is BBB rating or even junk rating. That is because, for reasons which I do not understand, there is an acceptance of the fact that debt can default. So whenever you are investing in debt, you build in an assumption of a credit loss and you make an investment. So when a part of your portfolio defaults and you're operating in a high risk debt segment, it doesn't cause you a lot of grief, because you have actually built in assumptions of credit losses when you're building a debt portfolio. In India, the tolerance for debt default is 0. You can lose money in equity. However, if you have invested in debt and you have lost money, and if that instrument has gone into a default, the tolerance for that is extremely low. So there is very, very high level of risk awareness when investing in debt. So our pitch to this really has been that like people can lose money in equity, yet over the long term they make money in equity markets. Similar has to be the attitude towards debt as well. When you are investing in lower rated credits, and because they are lower rated credits, their default probabilities are going to be higher. That doesn't mean that you shun those debt. What it means is that you take a portfolio view. I am investing in a portfolio of lower rated debt. This is the return which that portfolio is giving me, right? And I build in a credit loss. I assume that X percentage of that portfolio will not pay back. And I see what is a post credit loss assumption risk and return that I am getting. If you adopt this approach, the lower rated bond market can really develop, because then you can really have investors take a portfolio view and have an allocation carved out in their portfolio for high rated debt.
I think that's it from our end on the question.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Hi sir, I'm from CSR Times. My name is Himani Karnatak. So I would like to hear about you and your profession and your foundation from which you are.
So my name is Vikram Gandhi. I'm actually a professor at a business school where I teach a course on investing for impact.
Fine.
I also set up Asha Impact, which is a impact investing platform which invests in companies focused on the bottom of the pyramid. So both for returns, but also having impact in affordable housing, financial inclusion, and a few other areas like that.
That's really nice. So what is your outlook for like CSR initiatives? Because it has been regulated in India, as in now it's been, you have to do it. The corporates have to initiate for the CSR time. So what do you feel? How do you see it?
So I think generally as a development matter, it's a good thing that the corporates are involved in this. I think when the CSR rule first came out, the 2%, people were unclear as to how they should actually use this money, etc. But I think over the course of the last couple of years, a higher level of sophistication has grown where people are now using their philanthropy, what I would call, in a strategic manner, which you are not just writing a check or giving money away. You're saying, well, how can my money really make a difference? And part of this conference that we're at is about that, which is how do you make development money, CSR money, more effective in achieving the objective that it has?
Yes. So what should be, CSR is working as in all areas, whether it's sanitation, whether it's education or global impact also. So what do you feel there should be like other certain criterias or the other certain factors I would like to add upon that you think can create a good impact in the future?
So I do think that CSR, if it can be done where you're measuring not outcomes, you're not measuring outputs but outcomes, which means that you're not just saying, okay, well, I educated 100 children. What you're saying is, how did that 100 children, are they now properly educated? So therefore, the outcome of education has been positive as opposed to I just educated 100 children. So I think a lot about impact investing and impact assessment is really on the measurement. And so therefore, I think that's where we need to go, where like how do we make every, all the rupees that the government spends, but also that companies spend on CSR, how can we actually make it more impactful from an output perspective and an outcome perspective?
So I was just having a word, so where I come to know that international delegate she was. So she was representing her organization here. So she was saying that CSR has been implicated here or regulated here in Indian economy, but not in internationally. So she's looking forward for the international impact also, like CSR in terms of Indian economy to impact the international economy. So what do you say about that?
Well, I think I'm not sure about how that can really happen. But I think there's so much to do in India from an impact perspective that I think it's probably better for the Indian corporates to really focus their efforts in India. Now,
Yes.
you know, every problem that exists in the world exists in India in multiple folds. And I don't mean that in a negative way, it just does. And so therefore the ability to actually use impact investing. So one of the things which I think the CSR laws should think about is how can you not just include charity as CSR, but also things which involve investing. Because investing seems to make things more accountable as opposed to just pure CSR. So I'm hoping that the government and its thought process moves in that direction.
In the coming fiscal years. Sure. So it was very nice talking to you. Thank you so much,
Not at
sir.
all, my pleasure.
Morning, Dave.
Thank you so much for coming to Prabhav 2018. Can you tell us why you come for Prabhav 2018?
Prabhav 2018 is I think, a wonderful idea and a great platform for especially the people in all Indian planning space to come together. That's number one. Number two, I think this brings together people not only from Indian context, but from both Asian and European context to be able to mix and share ideas, investment ideas at the same time. Meet LPs and GPs and be able to take this to the next level as we all want this impact investment platform. So I think Prabhav is a wonderful opportunity in the platform.
And sir, what do you think about the LPGP meetings you are hosting?
The LPGP meetings, we always talk about it and we need to have things that happen, but I think the first time that I would see such an LPGP meeting being done in such an organized fashion, and I think it's a great opportunity for all the LPs and the GPs to be able to meet prospective funds. So I think it's a great idea, and the way you set it up, I think it's wonderful. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sridhar.
Thank you for being part of this. Thank you very much.
Lovely to meet you.
Great to see you. Megha must have been talking to you. And,
Hi, how are you? Good. Lovely to meet you.
I want you to look at the camera and Shailesh, tell me what attracts you about Prabhav 2018?
I think the last time you guys did Prabhav, you did a wonderful job. A lot of people in the conference. But what is unique about this time is that you organize these LPGP meetings, very, very focused, which is a real value for both LPs as well as GPs. I congratulate you for doing a wonderful job.
Hey, thank you. How many LPGP meetings do you have?
So we have around 4 today, and then around the GST summit, we have a few more.
Shailesh, thank you for your support. Thanks a lot. Good morning, Gavindeep.
Hi,
Gavindeep, you're from Telecap and Avishkar. We welcome you. Could you tell us what has attracted you to Prabhav 2018?
I think it's the second time I'm attending Prabhav, and the kind of investors we are able to bring in, the kind of people that attend Prabhav, it really is interesting. And I think I wish the entire Prabhav all the very best. I'm sure it's going to be a good success.
What do you think about this LPGP meeting we are trying to set up?
I think it's a great concept. I think if done well, I'm sure it's a great success, and it should help across geographies, because we see a significant amount of networking that happens at the LPGP meetings. And so if it's, I'm sure these are more focused meetings and should be very successful and fruitful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome, Mukesh. I know you are from Mentera Capital. We're delighted you come to Prabhav 2018. Mukesh, can you tell us what has attracted you to Prabhav 2018?
This is one of the few places where you have so many stakeholders from the impact ecosystem are all working together. And the interesting part is it is one-day event where you get to meet everyone. And interestingly, you are doing it on weekend also, people can take time out to do it.
Thank you so much. And could you tell us, Mukesh, about what kind of research report you have written for Prabhav 2018 for the benefit of impact investors council?
Yeah, sorry. Thanks for that opportunity to talk about agriculture, to talk about farmers. So, we have been working in the agriculture space through Veluru for almost 19 years, and through Mentera, it's an area of importance for us, important sector focus for us. Farmers and challenges of farmers are very important to us. And you have seen the stress that farmers are going through. Anytime there's a conversation that happens around the challenges, we talk about the investment themes, we talk about the trends that actually don't see. Very rarely people talk about farmer issues. So in our research, farmer is front and center for everything that we're talking about. So there is a real focus on the beneficiary.
Thank you so much, Mukesh. And Mukesh, one last question. I believe you're taking part in the LPGP meetings. What do you think about these meetings?
I think that's a very interesting format that you've come up with. It gives 30 minutes of time for LP and GP to talk to each other, and then they can take their conversation forward where the synergies are and where they align. So I think it's a good way of getting everyone together and figuring out who have synergies so that they can build on it.
Okay. Do you know who you're meeting today in terms of LPs?
Yeah, I'm meeting ADB, meeting Sonan's folks, and also meeting people from MacArthur Foundation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, Mukesh. Super.
Good morning, everyone.
We're delighted to have you from Paramount Capital. Tell us why you're here for Prabhav 2018.
So, my first interaction with IIC happened in the previous summit in 2016, and I was super impressed. Just the amount of buzz, it seems to be the most collaborative space for impact investors to get together and move in the right direction.
Okay.
Along with the ecosystem.
And by the way, I believe Paramount Capital is also doing a research report for Prabhav 2018.
That's
Can you tell
right.
us about it?
Yeah, we're working on a report for financial inclusion. So, financial inclusion is very close to Paramount Capital. It's, in fact, the organization started with a focus on financial inclusion right from the microfinance space, and now we are fully involved in the financial inclusion space in India. So,
Lovely, lovely. And tell me, you have some LPGP meetings you're attending.
That's right.
Tell us something about those meetings.
the LPGP meetings, I think this is a great initiative. It's one of the biggest roadblocks is the flow of capital, and you need that kind of understanding between LPs and GPs, and that happens over time and not through a couple of pitches. So building that relationship is very helpful, and IIC actually promoting it and organizing these meetings, I think is a wonderful idea.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, Jarupa. One question. Second question will be, what do you think about Prabhav 2018? And thirdly, what do you think about the LPGP meetings? Three questions. So, good morning, sir. We're delighted to have you here from NABARD. Today we have Prabhav 2018. To start, sir, can you tell us a little bit about NABARD, how it has impact for society in India?
Looking for impact is basically in the DNA of NABARD. NABARD does not undertake any activity which does not have imbibed change in the lives of the people, farmers and the farmer institutions, etc. And we are also working on a very sustainable model in which the beneficiaries are always integrated into the sustaining the systems that we generate. Whether it is a farmers club in the beginning, or the SHG models, or the farmers club models, or it is the latest one is the farmer producer organizations model, where the people's participation is important, and therefore their capacity building, their management capabilities, and their equity, everything goes with our funding patterns. So commercial comes much later. Basically, we believe that organization building is prime forte of NABARD.
Thank you, sir. And sir, could you tell us a little bit as to what do you think about Prabhav 2018 being done by Impact Investors Council?
In fact, ever since I heard of Prabhav, I was very eager to meet my fellow colleagues who are looking for making changes in the lives of the people, basically, whichever way that is possible. That is how I understand impact. Impact means it should make an impact in the lives of the people, especially the poorer ones and the less endowed ones. So this meeting is a really, really good meeting, and we should have more of this. In fact, I am looking forward to the next meeting already. Great work. I know that it's going to be a very difficult work to get the people around the globe which are looking for changing the lives of the people.
Sir, what do you think about, you attended some LPGP meetings today, What did you think about the initiative of LPGP meetings?
It is very great to understand each other's profile and what is the interest between and then there are a lot of possibilities of converging our efforts and then collaborating for mutual benefits and then at the end of it we share the kind of the success with the mutual expertise that is available, and I wish to have more such meetings, maybe 1 or 2 days more, so that I can get to know more people on this.
Thank you so much, sir. We are most grateful to NABARD and your support, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
We are delighted that you're here from Northern Arc. Why have you come for Prabhav 2018?
I think our group, Northern Arc as a whole, has been doing a lot of work in terms of impact investing. And this field itself is so new in India that we really need much more of such sessions to really communicate the message regarding impact investment. So I'm really here to chat up with all the luminaries of impact investing, not only in India but across the world. We have people coming up from all across the world. And it's a terrific opportunity to meet them and get to know more and to show our products and scale them up.
Thank you so much, Ravi. And Ravi, I believe you're doing a special report to be released at Prabhav 2018. Could you summarize what's in that report?
Yeah, so I think it's a very opportune time that the world is talking about gender equality. It's a sustainable development goal number 5, and over the past year we have seen a lot of awareness in this issue, and it's great that Prabhav is organizing parallel sector discussion tracks revolving around different sustainable development goals, and it's been an honor and privilege for Northern Arc to take up the mantle for along with other collaborators for sustainable development goal number 5 relating to gender equality. So we are highlighting a lot of issues in terms of what are the opportunities and challenges, and also what role can the larger impact community play. And a lot of questions have been asked. We are asking that in the report and we don't have answers to, and we hope by discussing these questions in a forum like Prabhav, we'll have answers and solutions.
Very good. Ravi, I believe you're also taking part in the LPGP meetings. Could you tell us a little bit what you think about the LPGP meetings initiative?
I think it's really great. At conferences like this, you really struggle sometimes to meet everyone. And you really have challenge in terms of having a one-to-one connect, in terms of having a focused discussion. It really enables a lot of people to come together, choose which LPGP they want to attend, and show their products. And because during the conferences, a lot of times people step out of sessions to catch up on these meetings, but with a meeting like this, people can actually attend sessions, take in all the knowledge, as well as catch up on the meetings as well. So it really works excellent.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ravi.
And good morning, Sri Krishna. I know you're from Unitas Ventures, and you're also a board member of the Impact Investors Council.
That's right.
Could you please tell us a little bit about Impact Investors Council and what Prabhav 2018 is all about?
Sure. So I think the Impact Investors Council, it is the industry body for impact investors in India. But going beyond that, I think the organization has played a very credible role in building the industry, in bringing all the folks together, be it people that are investors like ourselves or LPs who are investing in our own funds, as well as more importantly the enterprises that all of us are backing, that are creating the large scale impact that we all want to see. So to me, Impact Investors Council is really the voice of the industry, and I think plays a very important role at the intersection of all the players that are coming together to make this vibrant industry.
And what do you think about Prabhav 2018? Sure. Why is it important?
Sure. Prabhav, this is the second edition for Prabhav, and I think the Impact Investors Council conceived it back in 2016 as really a forum that brings everybody together at the same time, and it's an opportunity for new connections to be made, to forge new relationships, to renew existing ones, and I think also discuss and deliberate things that are facing all of us as an industry. It could be things that we are proud about, challenges that we know are going to be coming our way, and that sort of thing. And I think for me, the one critical part which I think Prabhav has been a great enabler of and a very successful enabler, because I'm just coming out of one meeting, is the LPGP connections that Prabhav has made. And I think there's going to be more of those over the next couple of days, and all of this in the midst of all the other exciting action that's taking place.
One last question.
Yes.
I believe there are these tours to social enterprises being organized by the Impact Investors Council, and you're playing a role.
Sure.
Could you briefly tell us what you will be doing in Bangalore?
Sure. So one of the things about Prabhav, in addition to bringing people together for conversations, is to give people that are a part of Prabhav a sense of what's really happening on the ground, who are the businesses or enterprises, and what are the real problems that they're solving. And that's the background with which we've conceived the city tours. So there's one happening in Delhi, and I'm going to be part of the one that we're doing in Bangalore, where we're taking a group of people to meet with 4 different startups or 4 different enterprises that are creating considerable impact, but at the same time have raised a lot of capital at this point and are financially doing well as well in sectors including healthcare, waste management, financial inclusion, and fintech, and that sort of thing. So that's really what the city tours are about.
Shri, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, absolute pleasure,
really
Arvind. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, Karthik. You're from Asha Impact. Thank you so much for coming to Prabhav 2018.
It's a pleasure.
I know that you're a board member of Impact Investors Council. What are the priorities of the Impact Investors Council?
Thanks, Arvind. I would say the biggest priority of the IIC is to mainstream impact investing. We're about, I think, more than 35 funds, and we would like to mainstream impact investing in India, in a nutshell.
Okay, great. And what do you think is going to be discussed at Prabhav 2018, and what are the important things about today's event?
I think there's a couple of very interesting things about Prabhav. Firstly, this is probably the only conference of this kind, which is an LPGP conclave, where you only have venture capital funds and their investors coming together with this Chatham House rules and really discussing the fundamental issues facing our sector in a very honest manner. So I think that is one of the most compelling things about Prabhav. And the other is the way that we have curated all of the discussions around these SDGs. There's many ways to talk about impact investing and different approaches out there, but increasingly more and more impact funds, governments, and organizations are aligning their work around the SDGs. So I think that's going to be very compelling as well.
And I believe you have some LPGP meetings. Could you tell us about what do you think about these LPGP meetings?
Yes, no, I think that's a great idea, thanks to the Secretariat that has been implemented, which is that all of us have been, given the opportunity to meet with a wide variety of LPs. For many of these LPs, they don't come to India that often. They're, investing in India essentially through us, through the GPs. So it's a fantastic opportunity to have all of these LPs literally all around me. I see all of these LPGP meetings going on. So it's really a great opportunity, and we're grateful to IIC for enabling that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karthik.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Vineet Rai. You're the chairman of Avishkar in the Intellicap Group. We're delighted that you're attending Prabhav 2018. Could you tell us a little bit about the priorities of Avishkar?
Well, as you know, we are probably the oldest impact fund in India, and one of the oldest, if not the oldest, across the globe as well. We started with the belief that you can take capital and make a difference to the lives of people coming from lower quartile of the population, especially on the economic side of it. But over a period of time, what we realize is capital itself is not necessary. You have to build the entire ecosystem. And that's what we have been doing for the last 17 years. And lately, we have been trying to take the same concept that we developed in India to Southeast Asia, South Asia, East and West Africa. So at this point of time, our big priority is to try to replicate what we have done in India outside India and strengthen what we are doing in India.
Also, Vineet, you have taken the lead in helping establish the Impact Investors Council. As an industry body, what do you think should be the role of the Impact Investors Council?
I think like it has happened in many other spaces, it's important for any business to actually, when it scales up, to find itself different voices to speak on its behalf. For a lot of us as individuals, we have been speaking on behalf of the industry, but having an industry body which speaks on behalf of the industry has much higher credibility, both with the critical players like the government, the regulators, as well as other instruments of capital providers who are not inside India or outside India. I think the role that we envisaged for IIC was first to give us a platform to air our views and talk to each other. And as time has passed, I think the role has been evolving, and IIC has done a brilliant job of actually engaging with the government. And I think the conceptualization of Prabhav trying to influence both the local ecosystem as well as getting in the global ecosystems to participate. In my view, probably the biggest service that you are doing is what you did in this meeting, where you're trying to bring LPs and GPs to talk. Due to very varied knowledge bases of LPs in India, and because of a large number of people trying to start new funds, the kind of negotiation power that LPs wield is unequal and can create fairly significant dissonance over a period of time for impact investing sector. And I think the services that Prabhav has tried to do by starting a conversation would make a huge difference.
Also, you are a speaker at the GSG Summit happening in Delhi tomorrow and day after. What is your view about the importance of the GST Summit?
Well, see, all gatherings are important. I think one of the critical things that Amit Bhatia, who has also been associated with IIC as the first CEO, has been able to do is he has been able to take the idea that India is the epicenter of impact investing to the global level. Some of us have been talking about it, but the credit can go significantly to the organizers of GSG to send the message loud and clear by actually bringing in people or the countries who write much more about impact investing and who have some contributions to make to impact investing, to actually come to what I call is the Mecca of impact investing, which is India.
Thank you so much, Vineet. Thank you for coming to Prabhav 2018.
Thanks.